Do these Filipinos say the U.S. has deceived and betrayed them?
We have been a neo-colony for so long.
The imperialist U.S. really has its claws deep in the Philippines.
The relationship is full of deception from the very beginning.
So what do they mean exactly? Let me explain. In 1898, the U.S. acquired the Philippines from Spain after the Spanish-American War. It wanted control of the island nation because of its strategic location in the Pacific. The U.S. had promised Filipinos their freedom in exchange for helping them defeat Spain, but it broke that promise and instead colonized the Philippines and waged a brutal war that killed an estimated 200,000 Filipino civilians. And what came next was what U.S. President William McKinley called benevolent assimilation. American magazines and newspapers racistly portrayed Filipinos, as many scholars have put it, as savages in need of civilizing. So hundreds of American school teachers were shipped off to the islands to teach English and American history. The U.S. also started recruiting Filipinos to fight in its military. 250,000 Filipinos enlisted with Americans in World War II and were promised full veterans benefits for their service. But the U.S. broke that promise too and ended up cutting Filipino vets out of those benefits to save money. In 2009, the forgotten vets were finally paid. At that point though, those that were still alive were well into their 80s. But back to the post-war era, the Philippines officially gained its independence on July 4th, 1946. But the U.S. struck a deal to continue to station its military there rent-free. Throughout the 20th century, the U.S. used those bases as launching pads to fight in conflicts like the Korean and Vietnam Wars. And American leaders consistently said how important this partnership was. Now, many Filipinos did tell me they appreciate the economic and military support the U.S. has provided over the decades, and said they feel a sense of shared values with the U.S. But others told me this partnership has always been rooted in exploitation.
The history of the U.S. military here in our land, they step on our sovereignty, they cause human rights violations.
She's referring in part to documented cases of sexual abuse of Filipino women at the hands of U.S. soldiers and at least one murder. And how, after decades of military activity, the environment around the bases was severely contaminated. By the way, the U.S. acknowledged the mess, but said it wasn't their responsibility to clean up. By 1991, anti-U.S. sentiment had ramped up, and the Philippine Senate voted to shut down the bases. But the U.S. never really left. Various treaties signed in the years that followed allowed American troops to continue to train on other bases around the Philippines, just in much fewer numbers. And in 2023, amid rising tensions with China, the Philippines granted U.S. troops access to even more bases. And some Filipinos we spoke to are not happy about that.
They are using the Filipinos for their military practices, for their exercises, just for the benefit of their war, of their imperialistic war.
Keep an eye out for more videos from my trip to the Philippines.